Hi, welcome to the Blue Ivy Seminar, My Path to Becoming a Doctor with Dr. Bowen Yu. My name is Marina Chen. I'm a freshman at Johns Creek High School here in Georgia, and I'm the host of this event. The way this seminar is going to be structured is I will begin by introducing Blue Ivy Learning, and then Dr. Nyo will take over and share with us his experience in the medical industry. And at the end, if time will allow, we will take some questions that you can send in anytime throughout the seminar through YouTube Live or WeChat. This presentation was brought to you by Blue Ivy Learning.
I'm a freshman at Johns Creek High School here in
So what
Georgia,
is
and
Blue
I'm the
Ivy
host of
Learning?
this event.
Blue Ivy
The way
Learning
this seminar
is an
is going to be
integrated
structured is I
organization
will
delivers
begin by introducing.
education and personal development services catered towards kindergarten through 12th grade students. Blue Ivy Learning delivers excellent learning experiences through our result-driven online interactive classes, including academic, contest, college preparation, financial literacy, and critical personal skill development. Blue Ivy Community Services is a national nonprofit volunteer service that offers opportunities for students who are willing to give back. It also offers help to students who are in need due to compromised school education. The Blue Ivy Education Forum is a regular free education forum seminars that fosters a community of parents and students in pursuing high caliber personal development, including academic capabilities and leadership skills. Blue Ivy Learning will have a next seminar in 2 weeks on November 14th at 6 p.m. about Jewish tiger mom parenting. We will talk more about this at the end, so stay if you're interested. Now I want to welcome Dr. Bowen Yo. His background was that he grew up here in Johns Creek, just like me, and graduated from Northview High School. He attended Duke University and majored in chemistry with a concentration in biochemistry and a minor in biology. He spent a gap year teaching at Kaplan MCAT courses and received a medical doctorate at New York University School of Medicine. He completed a preliminary year in internal medicine at Carolinas Medical Center as a part of a requirement for his residency. He is currently a third-year resident in diagnostic radiology at Wake Forest School of Medicine. In this seminar, he will share with us an interview of a physician and their training, his path from high school to becoming a doctor, and advice for high schoolers and college students.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. So it's an honor to speak to all of you, and I hope that I can give you guys information that is helpful on my path to becoming a doctor. Next. So I kind of want to start off with something that is rather basic, but I feel that because the medical industry is very complex and there are many roles, that it would be good for me to kind of be explicit about what I am talking about. So I kind of just want to start off by talking about what is a physician, as people think about a medical doctor. And specifically, I want to define a physician as someone holding an MD or a DO degree, which are considered equivalent in the American medical system. And that term physician encompasses all medical specialties that the people holding these degrees practice. And I feel the need to talk about this because the people calling themselves doctor in the medical field is expanding. There are many people who hold doctorates and more in a PhD type education in fields like nursing or psychology who also hold the term doctor, but they're not necessarily physicians. And I'm not really going to be addressing what I'm talking about are not people who enter those fields. And the role of the physician is people who are leaders of the healthcare team and take ultimate responsibility for making decisions in the medical setting. And physicians receive the most formal training out of all of the healthcare professions. There are many people who have decades and decades of experience practicing, but in terms of structured formal education, physicians get the most of that. And that's because physicians need to have a very broad knowledge base, because our knowledge is ever expanding, and the physician has to be able to incorporate new advancements into their practice to keep up. Next slide. And I also just want to let you all know that there are many career opportunities to work with patients. Many people go into medicine, go into becoming a physician to take care of patients, but there are many roles for that. And being a physician is not for everyone, but some of these jobs might be better suited for people. And there's an incredible breadth of careers that may fit your interests. And just this list on the slide is a non-comprehensive list of what I could just think of off the top of my head. But physician's assistants are an example. They work with patients. They essentially take on the role of a resident for their entire careers, but working much fewer hours in residence and being paid more. Nurses and nurse practitioners are also people who get to work with patients. Physical therapists who help patients with a long course of recovery from devastating chronic illnesses. Respiratory therapists work with very severely ill patients, patients who need help breathing, essentially managing the machines that help people breathe. Podiatrists essentially work with all the diseases of the foot and essentially work as medical doctors and surgeons in any disease that affects the foot. Speech pathologists are incredibly important in patients who have difficulty with speaking, and also with keeping themselves from inhaling fluids and foods as they eat. And also radiology technologists. They help us run the scanners. They help the patients, guide the patients through the imaging. And they're incredibly important for the job that I do. And now I'm going to focus in on the structure of the training of the physician. And it's a very long road. And of course, it starts with high school and graduating from high school. Following high school, generally people get a degree from a four-year college. And one thing I want to clarify to the audience is that being a pre-medicine, aka someone in college who is interested in going to medical school, is not a major. And rather, it's a set of coursework that is generally required by medical schools to apply to them. And this is important because every college, in order to get a degree, a bachelor's degree, requires a major. And so you need to pursue an interest beyond just pre-health. That also means that what you study in college does not have to be science or medicine related. You can in fact major in anything you want. And in fact, if there's something non-science related that really interests you and that you want to bring into medical practice, or you think will offer a unique perspective into the field of medicine, by all means, that would be an excellent thing to pursue. There is some variability and outliers in the requirements, but in general, it's going to require, applying to medical school is going to require 1 year of biology, 1 year of chemistry, 1 year of organic chemistry on top of that. And I feel like among college students, the organic chemistry is probably one of the hardest requirements to apply to medical school. And many people drop out of the pre-health track because they don't perform well in organic chemistry. 1 year of physics, 1 semester of math in general, and biochemistry is not a strict requirement that every medical school has, but some schools require it, and it's probably something that looks good. After your 4-year college degree, you will go to a medical school, which is 4 years. There are unique exceptions. For example, NYU, where I graduated, does have a 3-year track, but the general rule is 4 years of medical school. And then after that, residency. Your training continues in residency. And contrary to popular belief, medical school does not actually prepare you very well to practice medicine. Medical school is preparing you to take on the role of a resident, and residency is where you learn to practice medicine. And residency, you work a lot of hours. The ACGME, which is a governing body for residents, caps your work week at 80 hours. But just, to give you an idea that they had to put a limit to 80 hours a week of work on residence tells you how intense the training is. In residency, people work maximum 24-hour shifts. 24-hour shifts are very common across many fields. The total length of this training varies by specialty. The shortest ones are internal medicine, family medicine, and pediatrics with 3 years, but they can go up to as long as 7 years, which is what a neurosurgeon does. My own field, diagnostic radiology, is a 5-year total with a 1-year internal medicine or surgery residency in front, which is what I did at Carolinas Medical Center. And there are many other specialties in between. And then after residency, many fields also encourage further specialization through fellowship. And that's something that I will be pursuing. I do want to let the audience know about an alternate path, which is to recognize the fact that the average medical student in the US is getting older and older. People going straight through, as in, people graduate from college at age 22, and that is becoming less and less common. And some people, in fact, choose medicine as a second degree. And I just want to show you guys what that looks like. So these people graduate from college, and they may get a PhD or may just work in any field. And then after that, if you did not pursue pre-medicine in college, you will enter into what's called a post-baccalaureate program or post-bac program. And that's a program that many medical schools or universities that have medical schools will offer, in which they give you, where you take all the courses necessary for medical school in 1 to 2 years. They'll provide advising to help you apply to medical school. And then you apply to medical school and ideally get in. And then I want to show you guys all, and I provide a URL to this at the bottom of the slide. But this is what the AAMC shows you as kind of the medical training from medical school through residency. But basically, 4 years medical school, and at the end of medical school, you'll apply to residency, which is done through the match. And I'm not going to go into detail on the match, but essentially, it's kind of where you get told where to do residency. And then you have your residency training, but then at the end, they want to acknowledge that medical education is lifelong after residency. That after you even after you start practicing as a physician, you're going to continue to educate yourself in your field, and that's a lifelong journey. And now I kind of want to talk to the audience about my own experiences, my own path, kind of the things that I did, my own academic performance, to give you just a single data point of one doctor that's out there. So I went to high school in Northview High School from 2004 to 2008. My course load in terms of academics was decently rigorous. I did have trouble keeping up a little bit, not the ideal student. But in freshman year, I took as many honors as I could take. I was in the honors algebra 2 track for math. I took honors Spanish. And then as a sophomore, I took AP World History as my only AP course. I took honors pre-calculus for math. And because my Spanish grades weren't that good, I dropped to regular Spanish. And then as a junior, I kind of just went for about as many AP courses as I thought I could handle. And Northview offered quite a few. So I took AP Chemistry, AP English. I went down to AB Calculus instead of the BC Calculus track because my pre-calculus grades were less than stellar. And then AP US History. So 4 AP classes junior year. And then I increased that to 5 as a senior. I got myself involved in many extracurriculars. I would say the only one in which I really earned a lot of honors and leadership roles was the policy debate team. So I was captain during my senior year of college. And then I also went to a lot of tournaments, several of which I did very well in. So I could list a lot of awards on my resume for college applications. The rest of the stuff, it was just kind of a participatory role. I participated in the Science Olympiad team, Science Bowl team. I didn't get too far with that. I was not a very good Quiz Bowl participant. I did a state science fair project in the 10th or 11th grade, made it to the state level, which I thought was decent, but I didn't get very far at the state level. I played classical piano, did a few competitions I did well at, and I also did volunteering through the Beta Club. My class rank was in the top 10%, but kind of barely in the top 10%. And my SATs were in the low 2300s. And I applied to, so just to give you guys some numbers of how many colleges I applied to. I applied to 8 to 10 colleges. And yes, Harvard was one of the 8 to 10. I know that early applications are now more and more common. They were something that was new when I was applying to college in 2008, but I did not take the option to apply early to anywhere. I was accepted to 3 colleges, and no, unfortunately, Harvard was not one of the 3. But I'm still quite happy with where I ended up in life. And I was committed to a 1 college, but I was waitlisted at Duke. I accepted my place on the wait list, and then I accepted my a position at Duke when it was available to me. And then in college, so I pursued a major in chemistry, and my reason for that was that it was my favorite subject in high school. And also, I could receive some advice in the freshman year of high school that I really took to heart, which was that, people think that biology is what you need to be interested in order to get into medical school. But I had a teacher that told me, no, chemistry is where people stop being pre-med, and so you need to do really well in chemistry. And so I applied myself to chemistry in high school, really enjoyed it, and that's why I majored in it in college. And I did a concentration in biochemistry, which is great because it's relevant in medicine. You have to know some biochemistry in medical school. And also part of that was also because the math requirement was lower. As I alluded to in my high school slides, my pre-calculus grades were less than stellar. I don't think of myself as a math person. And so not having to take college level math was a blessing in the biochemistry track. I did major in biology, and that's because kind of the classes I took to make myself an appealing medical school candidate just gave me the number of classes I needed for biology. And then I graduated with distinction, and what that means at Duke is that I did research and did a senior thesis project. And I want to kind of tell you guys about the extracurricular I did. So I got myself involved in student government. And what that meant is we had a quad council, which meant, a lot of colleges are organized into quads, which is like a unit of housing, and there are several quads. And the quad council was a student government thing that just like helped organize fun things to do for the residents of that quad, and I was involved in that. I did several volunteering activities. Duke Chemistry Outreach, I would say, is something I found that I became incredibly passionate and involved in. And basically, it started out with a class, and then also an activity I got involved in for 3 to 4 years, where I performed demonstrations of chemistry to school kids. So we went to classrooms, we went to museums, and we did things like demonstrate fire, you made ice cream out of liquid nitrogen, show them how dry ice could be used to put out fires. So it was incredibly fun, and it also was something great I talked about at my interviews. I did some research. During the summers of freshman and sophomore year, I found an opportunity in nephrology lab in a nephrology lab at Emory. In my junior year, I started a research project that would eventually become my senior thesis. And so I identified a mentor, got a fellowship grant, which basically paid for my housing for the summer, and a small stipend, and also gave me some opportunity to get involved in research. I completed my senior thesis, although the project I did was kind of a dead end. I didn't get any papers out of it. I didn't really get much like tangible products other than the fact that I did a thesis kind of on what I did, which was kind of a methods-based paper. So what it basically it turned out to be was I tried really hard to purify this protein. It did not work. Here is my thesis about that process. And that was enough. And research doesn't always yield successful results, and that was the case for me. And I also did shadowing, and shadowing is important for medical school applications because they want you to know that you know what you're getting into. There are many people out there who apply to medical school for not necessarily the best reasons. and who go apply to it not necessarily understanding what it means to be a doctor. So shadowing is important. So I kind of took my mentors in my nephrology research and asked to shadow them, and they kind of provided me that opportunity. And I also kind of want to tell the audience about how my AP classes helped. I told you guys all about my AP classes for a reason, and because they were incredibly helpful in how I did in college. So number one, doing a lot of AP classes helps you a lot in your college applications. They to kind of speak to a level of academic rigor, so that colleges know, oh, we don't have to worry about your ability to keep up with our course load. Um, and it's not so not just getting AP classes because they'll give you a lot of credits. Many state universities might let you graduate early by applying all your AP classes by applying your AP classes towards credit. But many of the prestigious universities like Duke and probably the Ivy Leagues will only let you get max like 2 credits out of your AP classes. They're not going to say, oh, we'll just let you take all the credits from your AP classes, let you graduate in 3 years. Rather, what the AP classes let me do is skip introductory weed-out classes. What do I mean by that? So your basic intro chemistry and your basic intro biology class is going to be huge. At many state universities, those classes might have like 400 people, anywhere from 200 to 400 people enrolled. And what they want to do with those classes is weed out students, meaning who can keep up and who can't. And the instruction is not going to be as great as a higher level course. So if you skip the introductory course with an AP credit and then go straight into your organic chemistry, straight into your advanced biology class, those classes are meant to retain and build interest in people who would pursue a major. And you're going to do better in those classes. You are much less likely to be weeded out, and you're much more likely to stay into that pre-health track. And so I think that it's a great thing to do AP classes for that reason. And then moving on to kind of my own path into my gap year. So what is a gap year? A gap year is essentially a year that people take off for various reasons. Some people want to work for a year before going to medical school. They kind of want to know what it's like to have a job and not have your first job be taking care of patients for 80 hours a week, which is very reasonable. Other people want to finish up a research project. My own reason for taking a gap year is because in order to apply to medical school, you have to have your application ready in the spring of junior year. And my application at that time was not very strong. Another reason is because I wanted to apply to a volunteer work program called Teach for America, which was a 2-year commitment. And I applied to it, but I didn't get it. But I couldn't have applied to medical school and apply to Teach for America at the same time. That just wasn't feasible for me. And also during the spring of my junior year, my research, you guys might have realized in my slides earlier, my major research experience in college didn't start until the summer of my junior year. So I didn't have my major research or my shadowing experiences until after I would have had my application ready. And so for those reasons, I took a gap year. My advisors, in fact, told me that it was better to take a gap year because your application oftentimes gets better. So I took a job teaching MCAT courses for my gap year because I did very well on the MCAT. And then I also transitioned into a research job at Emory during the March of my gap year. And so before I talk about my own application into medical school, I wanted to show you guys this page. And I have a URL for this page up on the right. And this is what the AAMC, the American Association of Medical Colleges, says you should be competent at in order to apply to medical school. And at first I looked at this and I thought, man, this is not helpful because this is telling you be good at everything. So many things on here you have to be good at. But what I feel is helpful for you all to recognize is if you look at the bottom, the blue and the yellow icons, that is the stuff that you study, your book knowledge, your SAT, your MCAT, your research, right? That's what they think is important. And look at how much of that red stuff is things that, many people might call soft skills. How good are you at interacting with other people? Your cultural competence, meaning your ability to respect people who come from different backgrounds from you. Oral communication, professionalism, ethical responsibility. And that's more than half of this page. And I think it's important for everyone watching this to understand that these are things that are actually kind of harder to get onto a resume and onto your application, but medical schools value them a lot. And it's because the job of a doctor relies on these things more than I think a lot of people realize. Patients are less likely to sue you if they like you more. That is evidence based. Research has shown that whether or not patients sue you depends on whether or not they like you. Patients have to trust you. They have to tell you information that they may not share with anybody else in the world. And a lot of patients don't have healthcare literacy. They come from very different backgrounds, and you are going to have to explain to them why they have to, undergo a surgery or take a medication that may be very expensive for the rest of their lives. And they have to trust you enough and understand what you're telling them enough to do that. And you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have those skills in red, you will have a lot of problems doing that. I also want to show you guys some data about the medical school applications. It's very competitive. And it's only getting more and more competitive. Big upturn in 2008 with the financial crisis, but we broke the 50,000 applicants per year mark, kind of in 2015. And on the next slide, I will show you some other numbers. And this is kind of on the top row is how many people apply every year. And the second row is how many people get in every year. And so less than half of all applicants get in. But remember that those 53,000 people are all people who think that they have a shot at getting into medical school. They are people who feel that confident enough in their ability to get into medical school to spend thousands of dollars in an application cycle between application fees, plane tickets to interview, and less than half of those people get in. So it's an incredibly competitive process. When I applied, I was rejected from Boston University for application without them looking at anything else in my application. They told me they had 100 applicants per spot that they had. So they were rejecting a whole bunch of them. The wisdom that I got when I was in college, when I was thinking of applying, is that they told me 1/3 get in on the first try, 1/3 get in on a second or subsequent try, and 1/3 never get in of those who apply. So now let's talk about my own application. So I came into my medical school application with a very good MCAS score. I am a very good test taker. It's also why diagnostic radiology is a good fit for me, because it's probably the medical field that is most like taking a test out there. I came in with a GPA of 3.66, which is not phenomenal. It probably hurt my application more than helped it, but my MCAS score kind of carried the academic part. My research, I participated in several research projects, and I showed that I was driven, but did not produce much tangible product, which probably meant that certain medical schools, not all of them, will emphasize residents doing or medical students doing research. And so I showed that I was not going to be a top-notch researcher. My volunteering was on the strong side because I volunteered at the Cancer Center at Duke, and I volunteered with Duke Outreach, which I could speak passionately about. I did shadowing and I did some, but I didn't have much diversity. And also, I think that my research mentors I did not learn as much from my shadowing as I could have. So there were some interviews where they asked me what I learned from my shadowing, which I don't think I gave the best answers to. And so that was a weakness in my application. I don't feel like I had shadowing experiences that I could adequately reflect on and demonstrate that that I knew what I was getting into. And then some numbers. So I applied to 22 schools, which is, a lot more than colleges. I interviewed at 8 schools. Some of them are extremely good medical schools. I was accepted at 1. I was waitlisted at 1, which was NYU, and I was accepted to NYU off the waitlist. I also want to tell the audience about something that was not common knowledge until that's not common knowledge and was not knowledge to me until I was a freshman at Duke. And that's something called a committee letter. So every college has a pre-health advising group, and they have a lot of experience in evaluating applicants, and they can give you a really good advice on can you get in? Oh, do you think you could get into at least one school? Do they think you will get into a phenomenal school? I was told I would definitely get into at least one school, and they were right. But this committee is responsible for writing a letter that kind of just evaluates you in a very objective manner. Um, and different schools have different policies on this committee letter, and some schools, including Duke, have the right to turn down writing you a letter. They might say, we don't think you can get in. Our committee will not support your application to medical school. And if that's the case, it is a big red flag to apply to medical school without a committee letter. That you will have to like write an essay explaining why you did not get a committee letter. Um, some schools, on the other hand, I had friends in medical school who had a committee that said, we don't think you will get into a medical school, but if you want to apply anyways, we'll write you a letter because our philosophy is everyone should get a shot. So if you are looking at colleges and a college says, "Hey, we have 98% of our applicants get into a medical school," just realize that might be because their committee turns down a lot of people from applying to medical school. But I don't want to make a statement on whether that is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, because like I mentioned, applying to medical school is incredibly time consuming and expensive. So, I don't think those committees are doing a bad thing in saying we don't want to support your application because you're going to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars, and we don't think you're getting much return from it. I believe I duplicated that slide by accident. My apologies. So I also want to give you guys just a little bit of information on the structure of medical training. So generally, you have classroom education for the first 1 to 2 years. Then you'll take an exam based off of that information. Now, that exam used to be a very competitive exam, kind of an MCAT for applying to residencies, but they're just now moving to a pass-fail structure for that exam, and it's uncertain what that means for the future of residency applications. Then you'll do a clerkship year, which is where you go into the wards with a medical team, with residents and attending physicians, trying to learn as much as you can. And this is one of the most difficult parts of medical school. You will be working a doctor's schedule much of the time, and you have to study for a test that will influence your grade at the end of every one of those rotations. And this is also where interpersonal skills are important. Residents have to like you because the residents are the ones responsible for teaching you. They have to, they have to engage with you to teach you the material. And then the last year of medical school has a lot less structure. You will be taking another board examination. You'll probably be doing research. You'll do an acting internship, which is an advanced rotation in whatever you're going into, and then you'll be applying to residency. So for me, I decided to apply to diagnostic radiology. I made that decision during medical school, and I really made it after all the clerkships I talked about because I felt like I needed to expose myself to a broad range of specialties before I could decide. And then my residency consists of 1 year preliminary year in internal medicine, but you can do surgery or a transitional year, which combines those experiences. Uh, Diagnostic radiology is a 4 year residency after that with increasing responsibilities throughout the residency. And then in radiology, there's an expectation of an additional 1 year fellowship before people start practicing. And I'm currently applying to breast imaging fellowship, which is a fellowship that specializes in reading screening and diagnostic mammography, so diagnosing breast cancer, breast MRIs, and also performing biopsies of abnormalities that you see on the mammography. And so some closing thoughts, advice that I feel like I want to give to the audience. The first is that everybody has setbacks. And what I really wanted to accomplish with my presentation is to show you guys the setbacks that I encountered, less than stellar grades in high school, not getting Teach for America, setbacks on my research, because there are a lot of, every university has their faculty CVs online, and they're very intimidating, very impressive. But that's also because you don't see the setbacks that they encountered. And so all of you are going to encounter setbacks, and I don't want you to be discouraged by them. The quality of your extracurriculars is so much more important than quantity. Medical schools and residencies can tell if you were engaged, your level of engagement with every extracurricular you put into your CV. That's kind of the point of the interview. But it's you never know beforehand what extracurriculars are going to be meaningful and what extracurriculars are not. So even though quantity is not important, you're going to have to be involved in a large quantity of extracurriculars to identify good ones to put on your application. Challenge yourself. I don't think that there are very few things that are going to be more challenging than your worst day as a doctor. And I think that residencies and medical schools can tell if you challenge yourself, and they will be impressed by that. And so I encourage all of you to challenge yourself. That doesn't mean bite off more than you can handle. And I do, and I don't also mean challenge yourself just academically. There is something to be said about taking easier course load for a higher GPA. But in your extracurriculars, in your volunteering, I do encourage you to challenge yourself. Be aggressive and proactive about seeking shadowing opportunities. I think that it's very hard to get a good shadowing opportunity. And if I could do something differently for my medical school application, one of the things I would have done is be more proactive and be more aggressive in shadowing a variety of physicians. And I don't know how to give you guys good advice on getting those opportunities, but certainly something to think about. I want to let you all know that getting into an American MD school is probably the most difficult and competitive part of becoming a doctor. Once you get into a DO or an MD school, your chances of graduating are very high, and your chances of getting into a residency are very high, with the caveat that you listen to your advisors on whether or not a specialty is too competitive for you. There are certainly very competitive specialties out there that not all American MDs and DOs can match into. I will also say that I specify American MD schools because there are Caribbean schools out there that have high acceptance rates, but a lot of doors get closed for those students. That's why I encourage all of you to pursue American MD and American DO schools. The further you get into your career, the more you are evaluated by people who work closely with you. And that means that, when you apply to medical school, your application is one of thousands, one of 50,000 actually. And it's all about getting stuff on your resume that really pulls the eye. But once you get into medical school and once you get into residency, you're going to be evaluated by people who work closely with you. Residents who will probably spend a whole week working side by side with you. Attendings in your residency that may spend years, just working alongside you. And in that way, how much people enjoy working with you, and also your EQ, like your emotional intelligence, your ability to kind of conform to social norms and, make good small talk, is going to be essential to their opinion of you. And then the last caveat is that anything I tell you could be out of date by the time you go through this. Medical education is constantly changing. The MCAT was changed like 2 years after I took it. As I mentioned, step 1 is going to pass fail. So things are constantly shifting. So always do your best to be up to date on the latest information as you go through with this process. So that's all I had prepared. I'd love to take any and all questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you. That was so very inspiring. And right now, you can send in any questions you have through WeChat with the ID Blue Ivy Learning, or I'm pretty sure we're taking it on YouTube Live as well. And give us 2 seconds to collect them. Okay, so while we're waiting, I have a question of my own that I've been meaning to ask you. So it is said that studying medicine is very stressful in terms of academic and intensity. How do you manage the stress?
That's a great question. I certainly, part of it is about setting boundaries. especially in residency. Kind of drawing the line of when am I done studying and defining when I want to spend time for myself. It also, part of it is not sacrificing the things that are important to me outside of work. So for example, I got married and I have a child. And then there are people who delay doing that for residency and for being a doctor, and I didn't. And so, it's a combination of making time for family and getting what I want out of my family life, and also making sure to make time for myself to pursue my hobbies. Um, and it's kind of like I have to set my own, like, this is my time for working and studying. This is my time for relaxing.
Wonderful. Okay. So, um, well, question someone from the audience has asked is, if I decide to study medicine, how do I find community service and volunteer opportunities?
hmm that's a great question. Part of what I did is in high school. I think it can be a little bit challenging. I certainly participated in the Beta Club, which had a lot of people who gave good leads on volunteer opportunities. They might not be. So I did some book shelving at the library, and then I also found a great volunteering gig at a blood bank. And so I think definitely find local service organizations, whether it be Beta Club or something else. Um, if you go to church or are involved in a religious organization, I think those organizations always have a lot of volunteer experiences. But I think a good place to start is just the communities in which you participate in, whatever they may be. And I think being more that can also enrich your involvement in those communities. And in terms of college, I believe that most colleges have a lot of great opportunities to volunteer, especially if you go to a college that is attached to a medical center. I'm pretty sure a lot of universities that have medical schools, that have medical centers, certainly provide a volunteer track for pre-health students, especially because they want to be sending those students onto medical school to attract great applicants.
Mhm. So, there's another question that's kind of tagging along with this. Could you please share what volunteer experiences you did in high school and in undergraduate study specifically?
Sure, yeah. So in high school, I believe I mentioned that I worked in the library shelving books, and I volunteered at a blood bank, mostly kind of as a receptionist. Um, and kind of helped acted as a receptionist and gave patients snacks after they donated blood, and that was a great experience, just kind of talking to patients, getting a feel of what it was like to work in a medical setting around sick people, although not necessarily they weren't necessarily sick because they were giving blood. um, and in college, in addition to Duke outreach, I did, put on a slide that I did something called kind of the volunteer at the Duke Cancer Center. So that was an opportunity that was kind of advertised to pre-health students. And that was basically where I kind of served refreshments at the cancer center. I also worked as a greeter for patients at the cancer center, telling people where to go. And it gave me the opportunity to chat with people who were receiving care. I had the opportunity to speak with people who were coming from hours and hours away to get treatment at Duke. I had the opportunity to learn a little bit about what it was like in order to be undergoing care and to be treated for a chronic condition. I had a great conversation with someone who was getting an infusion and had a lung transplant, and talking about their experiences. And that was something that made it into my personal statement for medical school. Um, so that was one of the benefits of going to a top-notch university that had a medical center. Um, there was also some a more broad volunteering experience that I didn't mention, where they kind of just had me work as a greeter in various wards of the hospital.
That sounds so great. And actually, there is a question saying, you mentioned that you pursue a biology minor. Do you recommend pursuing a minor track in your 4 years of undergraduate, especially considering how competitive the application to medical school is?
Um, I would say that what you minor in is not that important. And honestly, for me, the minor was more of a convenience than anything. I don't believe it made me more or less of an attractive applicant. I was also one class away from a minor in history, but I just couldn't find a class that I was interested in. So it was kind of like it was just a matter of convenience. I think that what you major in is probably a bit more important, and that's what you're going to be dedicating most of your time to.
Have you ever encountered any difficulties in the path of studying medicine? What makes you firm in your belief and never give up?
Hmm. Man, that's a great question. I think that a lot of it was difficult. I think that especially because I was trying to figure out how to pursue the most rigorous course load as possible without as difficult of a course load as possible without overwhelming myself, without tanking my GPA. I was also trying my best to find research opportunities. And my research was not succeeding, and that was certainly a source of stress, especially when you see all those people, your peers, with all these great research projects, or like you hear about these people applying with like all these great applications and comparing yourself to others. So I think a few things that were really important to me. Number one, resist the urge to compare yourself to others, and you're never going to succeed in that, let me tell you now. Number two, go to advisors for honest feedback. Um, I had a Duke advisor who saw hundreds of students a year, wrote hundreds of committee letters a year, tell me that I had the application necessary to get into one medical school. So kind of and these advisors aren't just talking to you at the end. They're holding events all throughout your college. They all would like every, several months, they would have some event about applying to medical school, some information session, and just kind of talking to them. Hey, I'm worried about this part of my application. Is this something to worry about? And what could I do? What do I need to be doing? Constantly be asking advisors, what do I need to be doing? And then doing that. That's definitely a big part of this difficult process.
So you've done a lot of things. Like, what are the most critical things that made you stand out on your application?
Yeah. So my caveat is that the only thing I know about applying to medical school is that my application got me in. I was never part of any sort of application admissions committee. I think it's hard for anybody to tell you what got you into medical school. So with that caveat, my general sense is that you should have a broad range of experiences. And then also bring something phenomenal to the table. Have something in a lot of areas, and then be very good at something. For me, that was test taking, which is not going to be everybody in this audience. There are people who, like my wife, I feel like her big thing was research. She did a lot of research in college, and that's what got her into medical school. So I think that um, you have to do a lot of volunteering to show that you are community oriented, that you want to help other people. You should have some sort of exposure to the healthcare industry, so that you know what you're getting into, so that you aren't applying to medical school because you watch Grey's Anatomy or because you want to be House MD. It may sound silly, but there are people who have interviewed at medical school who say, I want to be like Dr. House. And then, they definitely were not accepted. You should show that you are academically curious. And not everyone has to do these things. And, but like a vast majority of every medical school applicant and everybody who gets accepted does these things. So do a lot of those things, and be really good at one of those areas.
So, how about medical school in Canada or like in any other country?
Man, I have very little framework for medical school in other countries. I I have yeah, I know that I have a sense that applying to medical school in Canada might be a bit more competitive than the US. This is based on some Canadian classmates I had in medical school. But beyond that, I have very little advice to give.
When did you know you wanted to be a doctor?
Oh, that's a great question. Man, I feel like it's very hard to answer the moment that you know you want to you want to do anything. But if I had to pinpoint something, I think it'd have to be while I was shadowing. And part of that is when you see a team of doctors at work, it was kind of a powerful experience for me. They were taking a lot of data points. They were just listening to their deliberations on what to do for a patient. I think like that the shadowing is really important because you really get to see what it's like to do the work of a doctor. It's not all heroics. It's not all like, doing chest compressions like you do on TV or a very intense surgery. A lot of it is just sitting around the table talking and like reviewing all the data points of the patient, trying to come up with a decision and using every bit of knowledge available to you to help a person. That was, I think, the most powerful experience for me in deciding to be a doctor.
Okay. I want to let the audience know right now we're going to take one more question, but if you do have any more, feel free to send it into the WeChat ID and we'll follow up with it later. Okay, so last question. What is your advice or experience on finding doctor shadowing opportunities, especially in a pandemic year? Like, what advice can you give?
Oh man, that's a very difficult question, especially since I don't think I did that great of a job at it. Let's see. I think that asking doctors in your community was something I didn't do enough of. Um, I think that I certainly could have asked my own physician to shadow them. I could have asked some practices of my area if I could shadow, and I underestimated how willing they might be to do that. I think also being more aggressive. I was too afraid of being turned down for shadowing. I wasn't brave enough to do that. To just ask people that I thought might say no. So I think maybe asking a lot of people and being okay with being turned down a lot of the time is also something that I didn't do enough of. And then just kind of just being more proactive. I was a bit more passive. I um had my research mentors kind of just offer me it's a shadow, and I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. But I think I just didn't do enough asking, and I encourage all of you to ask. The worst they could do is say no, and they're too busy to remember you anyways if they do say no.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was very eye-opening. I didn't know there were so many steps to becoming a doctor, and you are very inspiring.
Thank
So,
you.
all right. And now I just want to mention our next seminar that I brought up earlier in the presentation. Ingenious Prep CEO Joe Butterfly and his mom, Lynn Butterfly, talk about Jewish tiger mom parenting experience. Joel's entire family, his parents, and 2 other siblings all graduated from Ivy League schools. And below are just a list of questions that they will answer during this presentation. And this will be on November 14th at 6 p.m. Thank you so much, and everyone have a fantastic day.